So most of us were hit by what's happened in Chennai, and it's unfortunate. And while, as Namrata said, we all appreciate your resilience and your enthusiasm. I mean, it's not only Chennai, I believe, the other parts also are affected because the supply chain is equally connected everywhere. So even if their CIOs is sitting in Hyderabad or Bangalore also, I'm sure they will also be affected. So a big cheer to all of you because all of you have overcome, and you should clap for yourself. That's my first part. Yeah, so, there's a lot to learn from what's happened in Chennai, and most of their homes also have been underwater, and I'd appreciate people have been without power. So some of the panelists sitting right here have been using text modes because WhatsApp consumes more electricity, so they've been saving on power. So these are some of the modes which has happened in the last 2 days, and we are all learning from that. So my first question to our respected, since we have started off on this note, looking at what's happened in Chennai, and it could happen anywhere, any part of the country could be hit. What are some of the initial steps do you think as a CIO you should take? I can start off with you, Santhosh. Yeah.
Good. So before starting me, Namrata, you were just telling thanks for all the people who came from Chennai all the way here. So that is the respect which we have for this event and Srikanth. The relationship what we have for Srikanth, those pains are all like behind that. And as Srikanth rightly said, in fact, when I said my daughter that I'm going to Vizag for this event, she was actually telling that, Dad, you are following the cyclone route. That's the same cyclone route which has come, which just fall down little before Vizag. But I said, no, I'll have to make up this event because that's a commitment which we have made. Srikanth, our support is always there for you and for the Express Computer. Back to the topic from a disaster management perspective, as I started up with a lighter note saying that he's a perfect man for the disaster management. But again, when we are talking about from technology perspective, from an IT perspective, let me just share my real-time experience. So I was heading infrastructure and operations for Ashok Leyland, and I am currently taken up a new role as a Chief Digital Officer for Switch Mobility. For people who do not know Switch Mobility is the electric arm of Ashok Leyland. So company Ashok Leyland will focus on the legacy ICE engines, and we will be focusing more from electric vehicle perspective. But the experience, what I'm going to talk to you more is in terms of my profile, which I was leading as a data center management, infrastructure management from an Ashok Leyland perspective. When we talk about disaster recovery, the very first thing which goes on into all of our mind, including me, few years before, is that we will have to have a kind of a setup in different part of the state or different part of the country, where we will have to transfer the data, where we will have to host a similar application from, which is there in the primary data center. But the learning what we had and the practice what we are doing in Ashok Leyland is that while we also have a disaster recovery, we don't call that as a disaster recovery, but an active data center, which means we have invested in setting up a similar kind of data center in 2 different locations. And the learning what we had from the 2015 floods is that till 2015, we were also in the same model of having a setup there, replicating the data, copying the data, and maybe doing once in a year testing that too because of audit perspective, because of CISO perspective. But the great learning what we had from 2015 floods is that when there was an unexpected flood which happened where the Gindi, the Saidapet bridge, people from Chennai know the Saidapet bridge, there was water overflowing and everything was cut. Were we able to bring up the services? Partially, yes. But unfortunately, what happened was there was a lot of downtime which was available. So the learning what we did is that every 6 months, the primary site, which is the corporate office in the Chennai, plays as a data center. And the next 6 months, typically in the month of August, September till March, April next year, the applications runs from the Ozur data center. So as a CIO perspective, it's not enough that if you're going to set up and establish a disaster recovery, but ensure that it is also active. So there are 2 P's and 2 R's which we normally work on, which is preparedness and prevention, recovery and response. So these are the 2 P's and 2 R's which I call, which we follow it up. Preparedness is something where probably for every action you can be prepared, but how much prepared? There is always a problem, there is always a chance of issues which happens. For example, very recent example of the Chennai rains, the government was prepared, there was actions which are being done, but however, were we be able to mitigate the complete cyclone issues? The answer is no, because the preparedness cannot be 100% always perfect. So there are chances which is there where you will have to take action of prevention. Classic example again, my own house, we were having almost half a feet, 1 feet of water, even though I was prepared. You may ask, what is that I have prepared? There are 3 doors, and what I did was, just before the rains, I have actually completely sealed it with white cement and the POP material, knowing that there are chances of water which is coming in. And I also ensured that the washrooms are all being completely closed. But one mistake which I did was I didn't close the sink water outlet which is there in the kitchen. So the water started coming in. So there could always be chances, even though if you are prepared, even though if you are trying to prevent. But the next comes is response and recovery. So the response is when it happens, what is that you do? When there is a disaster which is happening from the data center perspective. Classic example again is that Chennai was completely cut off with data, cut off with power. But what is that we had? So there were like, you should also have an alternate plans of having, many people were talking about Vizag communications, which was there few years before. But those are all the things which are there. And the last R is responsiveness. So that is the place where you will have to respond on a timely manner, bring up those applications from the disaster recovery perspective, have a connectivity perspective which has been established, and ensure that the downtime which is available are very much mitigated or which is reduced only to the affected area, but all other locations are still connected. So from a disaster management perspective, probably these are all the live examples which I can quote.
Fantastic. I think I particularly liked the example of what you said from your personal experience of the house. I mean, most of us have this small weak link which often exposes every plan, to many more disasters. So, I mean, he's spoken eloquently about the technology part. Would you like to talk on the process part in terms of what can be set as a process and how the plan itself can change with time or evolve with time?
Perfect. Thank you, Srikanth. Thank you for having us here. I think the first part in the process is easy to say, very, very difficult to follow. Don't panic. Because immediately the sense of panic overtakes any rational thinking irrespective of the level of our education. Sometimes this also starts figuring out what level of education we have, the real ones. And this is where we need to really know our business. So a typical elementary ABC analysis of what's running your business, what's important. And here now you start asking the questions. As Santhosh said, we've got limited power and we don't know what's going to happen. We've got limited connectivity. So figure out what's important. So we got to make a list of what's important. Bluntly speaking, at this point in time, if some release is going to happen this Friday and the developers want to jump around and do load testing, volume testing, ask them to take a chill pill. Not required. Very difficult for us to say that. I know later we'll question why that release is delayed also. So one, you will have to clearly figure out what is that ABC analysis of it is very important. Now, when did this happen? This happened in the first 2 days of December. That means November closing. So clearly that part of supply chain and finance is going to take higher priority. Fortunately, payroll has already run, 30th over. So you know what, anyway, not that we care much for HR, but still, even in that case, cut off that. Now you start making this. You think I'll be able to make this open statement, cut off HR, cut off payroll? You know what will get cut off after that. So these analysis have to be very clearly done. Then the next part is who does what. Because the cyclone came in at about started coming into Chennai around 2:30 in the morning, and by 6:30 the fellow was well centered. He had made his house very clean near Marina Beach and refused to move from there, right? So who does what? Because all these so-called decision makers are not there. So at every point, you have to, and this is the real story of organizational empowerment. Are you able to make the decisions and keep the whole structure running? Because you're going to inherit those decisions that were made every 4 hours. And every 4 hours you will have to start re-looking at decisions made, because many of them are not valid. Because situation has changed. What is the situation that has changed? As per the original forecast, the cyclone should have gone by about 2 o'clock in the afternoon or something like that. My fellow made himself so comfortable, he didn't go till about 11 o'clock in the night. That was not the only problem that happened. The high tide rose and all the water was pushed back into the city. That was unexpected. So taking nothing for granted, because these processes are stuff that we've done it over years. So we refuse to challenge the norm. Everything is up for grabs. That means every process has to be necessarily challenged. Then you look at it also in terms of, now when you look at processes, now so far I spoke about the business. What about the people? I can get the business to run. I can say you got to come in and you got to do an overshift and all that, which is very normal. But how mentally prepared is that person who is working going to be at work, because he is worried about what happened at home, right? Don't know what happened to the kids, don't know what happened to wife, don't know what happened to mom and dad. You're starting to think. And now you are expecting that person to perform sanely at work and service the other people. Not a fair expectation to have, because the situation is like that. You can say you are responsible to do this, I empowered you, so on and so forth. So also figuring out how an organization, while it is expecting its front level leaders to take charge of the situation and run the business, how to take care of the back end of it. Figuring out what can, and here we are talking of simple things. Do you have a battery pack charger? More than that, do you have water, clean drinking waters, small things. But these small things, when you start reassuring your own staff, their ability to perform sanely in an insane situation is a higher probability. And these are normal things. You look back, actually today when we look back at what happened in the last 3 days, some of it looks funny. I'm not psychic, but some of it does look funny. But last 3 days, that's not what we went through. And then figuring out, then the other part of this, and again the cyclone example, it's not the cyclone that is important. It is the disaster that it has left, the trail that it has left, and the speed with which we can resolve back, not only business but also personal lives. Because there will be enough number of people worried about board exams, there will be enough number of people worried about university exams. All these are happening in day-to-day lives. So it's just not about business and get the business back, everything is up. Give enough time and rotate people so that all aspects of people and technology take the required time to bounce back, while the process is alternating between the emergency and the normal, and move it between emergency and normal as the case is. That's when you will see all of this falls in harmony. Next Monday, Tuesday, we look back at this and actually have a smile. But definitely this week is not. And at this point in time, the biggest thing that, and all of us as leaders, don't blame decisions. Don't blame decisions for this week. Next week, let's beat it down to death. Next week. This week, irrespective of how irrational or wrong the decision is, don't lose your cool. Don't blame the decision. Keep the morale going. Try to correct it on the fly. Next week, when all of us have gone through this, let's do a serious root cause analysis and call out the blunders that we made so that we don't make them again. But there is a time and a place when you do that. And during a disaster, even if there's a bad decision and you call it out, it's going to affect the morale of an entire workforce that is already finding it difficult to work. So I think we'll have to bring all these human elements along with business and necessities and the aspect that everybody is after all a human being and they've got other priorities beyond work. I think these need to come together.
Fantastic. I think this is almost like a playbook for preparing for disasters, though every disaster will teach us different things. So we have talked about technology, we are talking about process, now the people part. COVID really taught us, Arvind, about, we all had this diesel gensets and everything, but we never had people, I mean, we had DR sites, but in COVID times, but we never had people to go to those sites. So what is the people aspect about the whole disaster process part? And what is that we can learn so that we are better prepared for the future?
Yeah. Thank you, Srikanth, for the opportunity. And first of all, I'll congratulate entire Express Computer staff, the way you facilitated the logistics, very professional. You guys did a really great job. Okay, thank you. Okay, coming back to, the disaster recovery is again depending upon, what is the capacity what you have. Okay. Again, I'll come back to the people safety, but depending upon what is the level of your capacity. If you see my career, half of the career I was in Japan. Okay, in fact, I shared this one of the another conference. In Japan, if you see earthquakes, Japan is a place where all natural disasters, whether you take tsunami or volcano, you see every disaster, but still they kind of manage it. Okay. And interestingly, there is a prediction that, there is you call it as the epicenter. Okay, in Tokyo, in epicenter, they are expecting a huge earthquake in next 60 years. They've been predicting this for quite a long time. So you know what they did? They built a capital city, parallel capital city in Osaka. So the idea is, if something happens to the Tokyo, they wanted to run the government in Osaka next day. Osaka is an almost different location. It's almost 1,000 kilometers from the place actually. So that is a disaster recovery. And again, that's why it's called as a developed country. It's depending upon what is the capacity what you have. Okay. Coming back to the people safety, I'm from Aravind. In Aravind, we have a policy where every hospital would have a staff quarters next to that. Our 40% of the real estate, kind of given to the, for the quarters, staff quarters. So that irrespective of any situation, our doctors and the entire clinical staff would be there to support our patients. Whether it's a hospital or rural villages. Rural villages, we have a vision center, primary health centers, where the staff stay there to support the people actually. So, the people safety is a critical thing where, people are available when this kind of a situation. Okay, so this is from the people safety where, in fact, I kind of maintain all my IT staff near to the hospital actually. That's the best way to, support. So that they don't need to travel, they'll be staying in the same, this one. And third one is importantly on the technology side. See, in this disaster, you think only two things, right? One is electricity, internet. Okay, electricity and internet. So we have a, kind of a process. The electricity, we maintain that, the hospital run for minimum a week. Okay, even though electricity is not there. Okay, and we don't use, we use, wind wheel, it's like a reusable energy. Okay.
So, sorry to interrupt. So how do you run it for a week? What do you use?
So one is, we have our diesel, capacity, and wind wheel we buy electricity from them actually. So, but most importantly, I'm coming back to the technology side, internet. We have come across all these scenarios. For example, 3 years back, we had an incident in Thoothukudi where there was a protest, there was no internet. Internet was blocked because unfortunately our entire EMR is in a cloud. Okay. So again, again the change. Initially, our EMR was on-prem, and we had this scenario. Then we moved to cloud. Typically, in healthcare, people are conservative to move to the cloud. Okay, but we have taken a decision to support this actually. So when we moved to cloud, then another scenario came in Toothukudi that there was no internet. So no internet means, your EMR will not work. Entire hospital was shut down. So then what we did, okay, so to support this scenario, we kind of started implementing MPLS. In MPLS, even though government shuts the internet, they don't shut the MPLS. Okay, they cannot. Okay, so it's a static, right? So then, we were able to kind of continue the MPLS. Now, today's scenario is, even MPLS is there, but, due to, the floods, completely your cable was down, everything was down. Now we are thinking how we can make it a local computing, edge computing. Okay, so that each and every hospital can run, even when cable connection is down, or internet is down, or power is down, so we should be able to run. So, that's the way I kind of categorize. One is depending upon your capacity, how you can plan your disaster recovery, the business continuity. Second, the people safety. You need to figure out the way, what is possible for you. Third one, from the technology perspective, assuming the internet is not there, you need to have a local computing. There's no other option. Okay, so these are all the options which I use.
Thank you. Now we'll come to the post part. Now most of your colleagues, Santhosh, Arvind, you're seeing their factories are in water, they're trying to recover. So what are some of the first things with modern technologies, like cloud you mentioned, edge you mentioned, or even MPLS networks for them? What are the recommendations that you would give to your colleagues, or if you had to face a similar situation, to be back up on your feet within a short time? What are some of the best practices that you would advise? Santhosh, if I can start with you. Purely from a manufacturing belt, also from the lessons what you yourself seen.
Yeah. One thing which I would say is that whether do you have 100% solution for everything, the answer is no. Whether you talk about MPLS, whether you talk about Vizag, whether you talk about cloud, whether you talk about on-prem, whether in the actual event of disaster, will there be 100% business which is running up available for the 100% of employees? Probably my experience, I may be wrong, but the answer is no. Let me take a very classic example. We all know about Kumbh Mela. Kumbh Mela happens once in 12 years. That is the time where you see at least 10x time of people coming into that city. For example, it happens in Haridwar, where if, say, for example, Haridwar has got, say, 1 lakh of people, during Kumbh Mela, you will be having 12 lakhs to 15 lakhs of people. So 10x to 12x kind of a people will be coming in. Whether the government is aware that they will not be able to manage that crowd, but we should all accept the fact that whether the government would be able to set up an infrastructure to manage that 15x crowd, which happens once in 12 years. The answer is no. Government doesn't do an investment for handling so much of people, but government takes necessary action during that time where probably they will restrict the movement of people, they will restrict traffic, they will restrict movement of vehicles at that point of time to manage the situation. Probably I would go with that kind of a rule, saying that do you have a cloud solution? Do you have a connectivity solution? Probably we will have to look into the perspective of saying which is best for your organization and what is going to minimize your the downtime. A very classic example from an Ashok Leyland perspective for COVID. For companies like Ashok Leyland who handle bolts and nuts day in, day out, work from home is something which is a Greek and Latin language for us. We have never even thought about work from home. But what made us to work, to continue, to live during the COVID time? So we established certain things. So it was a great learning for us from COVID perspective. There were a lot of investments which was made post-COVID to handle such crisis. And 3 days, Chennai was down. There was no movement of people. In fact, our manufacturing unit, which is there in the north side of the Madras, which is Ennur, and the Research and Development Center, where we have approximately 1,500 people, was closed even today. because of heavy floods and road cutoff. And is there any hue and cry within the organization? The answer is no, because there is an investment which is made and people are able to connect and work now even in the disaster time. So what I'm trying to say is that whether you have a solution for everything, according to me, the answer is no. Probably you will have to ensure, invest and make right decisions in having right applications, right infrastructure, right data centers, so that you minimize the kind of disaster, the kind of business losses which is there for the organization. And this is my personal view.
Fantastic. A lot of learnings today. Yeah, Arvind.
Speaking about the
Post-disaster
cyclone of Chennai and all that, I've been running a hospital in Imphal. Anybody wants to figure out when last internet was available there? Probably in March. And you still have to run the hospital, and it's an oncology hospital providing tertiary and quaternary care. And that doesn't stop for any communal violence or anything. Healthcare doesn't stop for that. So it's absolutely essential for an organization to know it's nice to have, good to have, and must have. And this automatically forces us, just like the COVID situation and the work from home and the change in cultural behavior, it necessarily forces us to look for alternates. And that's where we are able to provide all these options of how Sting will look at alternate formats of healthcare. And these alternate formats of healthcare is in terms of the remote health. How can you provide consulting from a different state? Like what Srini mentioned, know your connections, your network connections. Because some of the MPLS, though the government has shut off the internet because of the social disturbances, the MPLS is not there. And also a part of this, when you are shut off, know your government agencies as in terms of whom you need to go and ask for what sort of help. Something as simple as I need to have a medical team travel from other parts of the country to Manipur. So traveling to Manipur can do, flights are working, but then once you get down in the airport, how do you get into the city? Those are the areas where there is curfew and there's violence and all of that. So figure out which government agency you need to give them advance information so that your travel can be safely managed and the duration of the travel and all that can be well planned. Like what Santhosh said, am I going to make a guarantee that everything is there? The approach of expecting a guarantee is fundamentally flawed. And this is where if you know your nice to have, good to have and must haves, you know what you're going to give off on. And once you know that, I think you'll focus on what's important to run the business, what are the various aspects, and an open conversation on change management. Because you're going to bring your people together and say, look guys, we are faced with that situation, this is what we are going to do, and this is contrary to what we normally do. This is contrary to the way even we've told, or probably contrary to the employment agreement I've signed with you where I've told you these, I'm going to have these changed. I think that open conversation, taking an organization into confidence, that's the first part of alternate business plans. It is not about, all of us don't have the luxury of setting up an Osaka. It's a brilliant idea. It's absolutely interesting. It's the size and scale is important. But do you have the necessary resources? Much to our reality, we don't have that. So what is it that we can do? I think those aspects of it is what goes into alternate plans and what is the scale of it. And this is where we need to know our numbers. You can't dip your financial numbers because something has hit you. So you need to know if alternate, how much of your original numbers you will start making, and thereby the immediate plans of what's going to happen in the next quarter in terms of making up those numbers. I think that rolling plan is also a necessity.
Fantastic. So for you, I have a slightly different question in terms of, you mentioned some of the technologies like MPLS. Any modern technology that you would like to recommend, like cloud is obviously a natural example for setting up a DR site. Any other technologies that would recommend for getting systems back in place?
Particularly for healthcare industry or hospitals, like, you know, I mean, today with the EMRs and the HMS, like the patient data is very critical. I think we need to have a local copy. So we need to have, you know, the way it should be, like, you know, you need to have a, you know, edge computing with the local access of the data and connect to the data, you know, cloud. That's the way we need to have, you know, to handle this kind of a disaster situation. That's the most important thing. The data should be available in the hospital, the local. That is the key thing. And in fact, we go through the lot of challenge, like, you know, we have a multiple hospitals where unique identification number is a big challenge, okay? Because, you know, if the patient, you know, Madurai from the patient is coming to Chennai, so the data should be made available. So we follow unique identification number. So in that case, you need to have a replica of the entire data in your each and every hospital. So that is the most important thing to handle this kind of a situation.
Good. I think about 2 or 3 minutes left. If anyone of you has any questions for this wonderful panel, we could take 1 or 2 questions max. Does anybody have any questions for this wonderful set of experience that we have on the panel? Yep, sure. Please, can you get him the mic? Yeah, please state your name and, you know, which organization from.
Hi, this is Narayan from Mylan. A question for the gentleman there. What are the factors that you should take into consideration when selecting a disaster site? See, we have talked about cloud could be a replacement for my data center, but it has its own challenges. I need a connectivity to that. Now, practically what is happening is when we are looking at setting up an on-site data center, assuming cloud was not in the place, you know, or clouds, we want to avoid that risk. We all end up in big cities. Either you have a DR in Bangalore or you have in Chennai or a Bombay. Each of these has its own risks. So what would be the factors that you need to take into consideration when selecting a DR site? And understanding that, you know, as I think it's a great example that you need to maintain a cold site and a hot site and swapping between them over a course of time. I think that's a very good site. If you keep it a DR site but you don't use it and all of a sudden you want to use it, probably it would not even come up, you know. So if you could highlight upon some of the points which probably should be looked upon outside, and probably I'm not sure whether when you want to go to a nice site like Hosur, you gave an example, probably there are not many options of a data center where I can host this thing, but is that something which we need to start talking about or thinking that my vendors should look at such places which are not so prone to risks which are obvious? There can be different kind of risks, but less prone to risk, like Chennai is getting hit every 4th year or 5th year. Do we want to have my DR in Chennai? Answer should be no, probably. So if you can probably talk about. Thank you.
If you've got your DR in Bangalore, that's your biggest disaster.
You cannot
Right, sir?
approach during the actual time
that you
of
can't
need.
approach even during a normal day. So that's your biggest disaster. So if anybody has got your DRs in Bangalore, and if you're not worried, now is the time to start getting worried. I think first look at, rather than doing this mindset of let's go to the big cities, let's do Chennai, let's do Bangalore, let's do Hyderabad. Find out where your businesses are running from. I'm not getting into seismic zone, what should be this thing, check the seismic, all that is the textbook of locating a DR site is there. Okay, but that textbook is not going to be directly playing with your business reality. Find out where your business is running. Now in your business, start figuring out your tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 in your respective business. Whatever be your nature of it, irrespective of the city, even if it is running in the same city. Even running in the same city, take somebody who's got a business only in Chennai. If you split yourself into various parts of Chennai, your nature of damage would have been lesser. I'm talking constant. So first find out where your business is running, run your DR out of your own business. Why do I say run your DR out of your own business? Your business is in your control. So you know what's going on. And I'm going to give the hospital example. We run our data centers inside the hospital. Why do we run our data centers inside the hospital? Because anyway in the hospital I'm supporting the ICU patients. So I've got power, or even if I don't have power, I have to have the power to ensure my patients are there. My surgeries are not going to drop. People are going to have surgeries at any point in time. I got to run my ERs. I've got to run my high dependency units. Right? So certain aspects of your business warrant certain physical infrastructure. know where your businesses are running, and see if you can piggy bank on your own network. Don't go searching for, I'm going to set it up in Airoli, I'm going to set it up in Lucknow and all that. Those are other options. I'm not saying no. You brought up a very important point when you were mentioning your DR center is becoming stale. DR center is not a showcase. DR center is, oh, we've got nothing to do in December. Our customers in the West are going to take a Christmas break. Let us run a DR drill. It is not that tamasha. Like what Srini mentioned, you need to be running this in your regular year. So in our hospitals, we don't say which data center is powering the business, because we will keep alternating that. It is not a once a year quality department wakes up because they've got nobody else to pick on and they pick on this. No. This has to be part of your regular process, and you have to run it when your real business is running. If you're scared to run it when your real business is running, then clearly you got problems in hand. And it is a fear. I'm not downplaying the fear. Don't get me wrong that I'm saying the seriousness of this matter is too high. We are definitely scared of turning the switch. But pick your own location that is part of your business chain. Piggyback on your own resources before you go for third party. If you're going for third party, cloud, local, whichever, check your contracts. Know your load and what percentage of the load you're going to run, because again most of this are cost driven, and we will bring down the cost because somebody will just say that it's running once a year. No, so you'll bring down the cost. You pay 20% of it and expect your 100% load to run. Be realistic. So I think those are the factors. I'm going to completely ignore the textbook of picking a DR site and the qualifications of one. And are you having trained staff who will be there? Not trained staff who can move. This is not a planned. DR doesn't happen planned. Nobody gives you an invitation for it. So have you run your routines with a staff who is not connected to it? So your IT should not be running this. If you just tell somebody in operations over a phone, go there, press the second switch, and then check if the third green light is glowing. This is how crude your instruction set can be, because that's all that they will understand also, to be fair to them. You need to be operating it at that level. After this, location is not your problem, irrespective of the cloud conversation.
Right. So you want to add on?
Probably Arvind, you will be the most unliked person in this room. The reason behind, there are many partners who are actually doing their business in running their data centers, and you are preferring for having their own data centers. But actually speaking, what Arvind said is right to a certain extent, where it is always better that you have the disaster recoveries also planned into your own offices itself, because it has got its own advantages. In the event of any failure, there are still people who are there available, who are there within your control. That is more important. So there is no need of you to be going ahead and requesting something. So disasters are something where actions has to happen like this. It cannot happen, okay, let's go have a 30-minute meeting room, let's have coffee, tea, then discuss what we can do. No, that is not the case. Disaster is walk on the talk. So you will have to talk on the walk. While walking itself, you will have to take a decision. So that's a kind of a thing. And I think it is there. And as he rightly said, if you have to go and ask Sundar Pichai or Google, it can always give you saying that what is the actual location where you can select. They will say it should be, it should not have earthquake, it should not have floods, it should not have seaside, it should have dual power supply, dual connectivity and all those things. Those are all basic prerequisites, but again, these are certain other things which if you focus on, I think our business is safe.
One thing, if your IT department is in basement 1 or basement 2, I think you know what applications you need to put now.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is also one of the points. Probably if you are planning to have a disaster recovery or a data center, let's not ensure that it is there in the basement or ground floor. Our data center is in the 5th floor, by the way.
So that's great. Great learnings, and I would like to, I'm out of time actually, so I'd like to thank our panel for being gracious enough, firstly, for acting as my dear plan. And thank you, gentlemen, for being part of this panel. I'm sure there's a lot of learning. Though it was impromptu, I think it was like a good playbook for all of us to learn from disasters.